Round one of the NFL draft is in the books. What a night it was. We're going to recap all the picks and the moves, but we're also going to run through a round 2 and 3 mock draft for Cleveland, along with some of the top draft targets. But let's start things off by just recapping everything that happened picks 1 through 32. No surprise at all, the Bears went Caleb Williams at pick number 1, and then we had another chalk pick at Jayden Daniels to the Commanders at number 2. Followed by a little bit of intrigue and trade, but ultimately, I think the Patriots made the right decision. They stay pat at number 3 and go with Drake May. This is where the draft sort of started for the rest of the league. As the Cardinals could have traded out of 4, ultimately, I think they make the right move. They stay put, and they secure Marvin Harrison Jr., the next Larry Fitzgerald for this franchise. And then the Chargers at 5 made the most Jim Harbaugh pick of all time. It is Notre Dame's left tackle, Joe Alt. Now, they already have a left tackle in Rashawn Slater, so they're going to kick Alt to right tackle, which, ask Browns fans how well that works, moving tackles from right to left, left to right. It's not always a smooth transition. At number 6, the Giants could have gone J.J. McCarthy, but I think they made the right decision by going with Malik Neighbors. He is their next OBJ, and that's Giants OBJ, not Browns OBJ. Then at 7, I think the Titans probably broke a table or two when the Chargers took Joe Alt. Maybe Morgan Wallen was a part of that destruction of property, and they went with offensive tackle from Alabama, J.C. Latham. He is going to be a run-mauling tackle on the right side of the offensive line. I think I know that the Titans' offensive line coach will love that pick. Then at 8, the entire draft got turned upside down when the Atlanta Falcons took Michael Penix, quarterback out of Washington. A quarterback I'm high on, just not for the Falcons because they just paid Kirk Cousins 4 years, $180 million, and they completely blindsided him. Can't imagine that relationship will be off to a great start, so that's going to be a nice problem for the Falcons to deal with. Then at 9, the Bears make, I think, the best pick of the draft when it comes to, not the easy one, 1 or 2, but later on, Rome Odunze, he's arguably my favorite receiver in this draft after Marvin Harrison Jr., and Caleb Williams has Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and Keenan Allen to throw to. There's no way he can't be successful. At 10, the Vikings leapfrogged the Broncos, moved up, with the Giants, with the Jets, and they went with Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. And then the Jets, who went back just one spot, but I guess the Vikings wanted to take no chances on someone else taking their guy. They went with Olu Fashanu. They've already signed a handful of offensive linemen in free agency, but they are trying to find a long-term solution. And a good way to do that is in the draft. At 12, a bit of a surprise, not a huge shocker like Michael Penix. The Broncos went with Bo Nix. I thought Penix and Nix would both be round 2 type of players. Ultimately, we saw 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12. Sean Payton gets his Russell Wilson replacement. At 13, I'm not sure the Raiders were going into the draft thinking Brock Bowers will be our pick, but ultimately he falls to them at 13, and even though they took a tight end from Notre Dame, Michael Mayer, in the second round of last year's draft, Bowers was just too good of a pick to pass on. I like this pick a lot for Las Vegas. At 14, if there were 2 locks in the draft, it would be Denver going QB, because they were not going to have Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson battle it out for the starting job. And the Saints were going to go offensive tackle. They were just waiting for the top guy on the board remaining to be available, and they go with Talisi Fuaga. At 15, we get our first defensive player taken. It is Colts new outside linebacker, Leatu Latu from UCLA. Some say the best pure pass rusher in this draft. Injury concerns for sure, but if he's able to move past those neck injuries and back injuries and whatnot he sustained in college, this could be a home run selection at 15. At 16, a player I mocked correctly to the Seattle Seahawks was Byron Murphy. Seattle had a really bad defensive line last year. They go get one of the best D tackles in this draft. At 17, did not expect Dallas Turner to fall this far. Don't think the Vikings did either, which is why they traded up with the Jags to try and replace Danielle Hunter. At 18, this pick was brought to you by Myles Garrett. The Cincinnati Bengals at 18, and then quickly, the Rams at 19, they go Jared Verse, but fast forward to the Steelers at 20, they go Troy Fautanu. 18 and 20, I think, were dedicated to stopping Myles Garrett. And honestly, you can't blame them. At 21, I think it's a big reach, Chop Robinson. When I evaluate prospects, production matters for some positions more than others. The ones that matter the most to me are pass rushers. If you can't get to the quarterback in college, I don't care how big, fast, or strong you are. I don't think you're going to wake up in the NFL one day and find the quarterback going up against offensive tackles in the National Football League. For me, the lack of production by Robinson concerned me. The Eagles at 22 were heavily rumored to be interested in trading up, but I guess they think, why bother? We got the guy we were going to trade up for at 22. Quinyon Mitchell, 3 really good corners now. Well, 2 good corners and maybe 1 piece of burnt toast in James Bradbury. At 23, the Jags traded back with the Vikings, and I think they got the same guy they were going to get at 17, which was LSU's Brian Thomas, a player that just lives above the rim, and he runs some great fade routes. At 24, we've got the Lions going with Terrion Arnold. I think it's a really good, smart pick for Detroit. They traded up with the Cowboys. They got my favorite corner in this draft class all the way towards the end of round 1. At 25, the Packers look to replace David Bakhtiari. I don't think Jordan Morgan is a starting left tackle in 2024. I think he'll start at guard and maybe graduate to tackle in a few years, but nevertheless, Green Bay shores up their offensive line. At 26, our old friend Baker Mayfield has a new starting center. It's Dukes Graham Barton. He played all over the offensive line in his collegiate days, so he's going to have a lot of versatility for Tampa Bay. At 27, the Cardinals go defense, which I think was a smart idea for Arizona, given the fact that last year they trotted out like the replacement team pretty much. Like Keanu Reeves was on defense for the Cardinals last year. There was no one recognizable for Arizona. Darius Robinson, huge frame, very good speed, good production. Just wasn't like blowing me away at any one of those 3 things I listed, which is why he was a end of round 1 guy compared to earlier round 1 player. Then the Chiefs made a trade with the Bills, and you gotta already see it coming if you're Buffalo. They are going to lose to the Chiefs in a playoff game because of a Xavier Worthy touchdown. And Buffalo fans are going to, rightfully so, riot. Then the Cowboys, who traded back with the Lions, get the exact same player they were going to get at 24 at 29. They just have an extra day 3 pick now. It's Tyler Guyton. He's a right tackle from Oklahoma. The Cowboys already have a right tackle. They lost their left tackle, though, and their center. I don't think they're going to move to Guyton right away to left tackle, so I'm a little curious to see how this unfolds. Then at 30, the Ravens went with Nate Wiggins. The Ravens always draft well. Just accept it. Now, Nate Wiggins, really lengthy, really fast, but susceptible to injuries because of a smaller frame. So that's going to be the drawback for the Baltimore Ravens. Deebo Samuel, you're not a 49er anymore. They just took your replacement. Ricky Pearsall from the Florida Gators goes across the country, and all the trade rumors around Deebo and Brandon Ayuk just got a whole lot louder. Then at 32, the Carolina Panthers decide, you know what? We do want a first-round pick after all. They made a trade with the Bills to go get Xavier Legette, the guy they've had circled since the first day of this pre-draft process, essentially. And by moving up 1 spot and giving up a day 3 pick in the process, they have the rights to pick up his 5th-year option and get 1 more year of control. So now let's enjoy a mock draft for the Browns starting in round 2. Now, before we look at any draft targets I have for the Browns and then my ultimate mock draft picks for them, I just want to preface with, I think the Browns are going to trade back from 54. I'm not going to try and predict who that will be with because the draft, as we can see, is so volatile and there's all these moves being made. But my gut tells me the Browns want to move back and get some more early day 3, late day 2 draft picks. But here are some round 2 draft picks for the Browns at pick 54. I'm going to include wide receiver Troy Franklin from Oregon, although I'll expand on him in a moment. Houston offensive tackle Patrick Paul has a ton of experience at left tackle. BYU's Kingsley Suamataia, he's just a really good raw product that if Callahan was still here, I'm sure he'd love to get his hands on. Braden Fiske, defensive tackle from Florida State. He's a really high-powered guy that just doesn't have all the physical length that maybe people look for, but I still think he's a really good, productive interior defensive lineman. And then I have to include the guy I've been talking about for 2 months, an absolute man crush on him. It's Texas A&M linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. Now, before we look at any of those players in too much detail, and I ultimately make my mock draft selection for the Browns in round 2, I do want to share with you guys some awesome information about our sponsor today, which is Game Time. If you are trying to catch a playoff basketball game, a Guardians game, or any other sporting event in your local area, download the Game Time app today and get $20 off your first purchase when you use code CHATSPORTS. Now, I like to plan ahead, but I know not everyone else does. So if you have a significant other or you hang out with a crowd that loves to do things at the last minute, Game Time's your best friend. They're going to have the lowest price on tickets right up to the start of the event and actually even an hour after the event begins. So download Game Time today and use that code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Now let's start off by talking about the Oregon wide receiver Troy Franklin, who's one of the most productive receivers in Oregon football history, 25 touchdowns. That's a program best. He's a explosive down-the-field playmaker, vertical threat that teams are always coveting for. And the Browns have made some attempts at getting wide receivers in the draft. They haven't always worked out. I think it's too early to grade Cedric Tillman, but David Bell, Anthony Schwartz, a couple third-rounders that I think if the Browns could go back in time and do things differently, they probably would. But Troy Franklin needs to put some meat on his bones. 6'1", 176 pounds. In college football, you can get away with that. In the NFL, corners are going to jam you, and you have to be able to get past those physical corners that are going to get hands on you. So Franklin, from an explosive playmaking standpoint, may catch the Browns' eyes. Edgerrin Cooper, I think, is the best player at the Browns' maybe second biggest need after running back if we're just looking at what the 2024 Browns need. Now, Cooper, in my eyes, has some traits similar to JOK. He's a little bit bigger than JOK, but he's definitely a guy that can fly into the backfield and be a playmaker for you. Is he going to be a reliable run-stopping middle linebacker? No, I don't think he'll ever get to that stage of his career. But 8 sacks, 17 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles. I am sure that Jim Schwartz can find a nice role for him in his defense. Braden Fiske is another guy to keep your eyes on. He plays defensive tackle. He's got a lot of traits to like. He's one of the faster defensive tackles in this draft class, and it's tough to find speed for the guys that are that big, right? Braden Fiske last year for the Florida State Seminoles at nearly 300 pounds. The guy ran a 4.78 40-yard dash. That right there isn't the best way to reflect how good defensive linemen are, but his 10-yard split, 1.68. I know these are just numbers, but trust me, they're good numbers for a guy pushing 300 pounds. Kingsley Suamataia from BYU is definitely a name to keep an eye on. 6'4", 326 pounds. He's 21 years old, and he's one of the most athletic players for his size. He's got experience at left and right tackle, which I think the Browns will covet because they may have learned from guys like Jed Wills that it's not super simple just to take a right tackle and ask him to play left tackle or vice versa. So Kingsley already has experience at both sides. So if the Browns envision moving on from Jed Wills or Jack Conklin in a year or two, they have someone in the wings ready to step into that role. And then the last player I want to look at is Houston's offensive tackle, Patrick Paul. I mean, an absolute ginormous human being, 6'7", 331 pounds. We saw the Browns last year go after a guy similar in size in DeJuan Jones. He's a bit older, 23. That's kind of pushing it for Andrew Berry, but the athleticism could make up for it. He's got loads of experience at left tackle specifically, and he is Mel Kiper's number 10 offensive tackle. My prediction is the Browns are going to look at this spot at 54, if they stay at 54, as an opportunity to go get best player available. And I don't think they're going to reach on other positions. And the best player left on the board is probably going to be an offensive lineman. And I think Patrick Paul could be a really good understudy for Jed Wills. As all 3 top offensive tackles are coming back from knee surgeries, the Browns may not want to mess around and put one of them back on the field too soon. so they get a really good swing tackle to begin his career off, and then after a season or two, Patrick Paul could take over from Jed Wills if the Browns do not envision him being a long-term asset for them. Now, who do you want to see the Browns draft? Let me know in the comment section below. Which guy that fell from round 1 into round 2 do you want to see the Browns select with pick 54 or another pick if they make a trade? On to round number 3, really quickly, a couple of running backs. And yeah, I don't think we're going to see any running backs go until the very late stages of round 2 or early in round 3. So Jaylen Wright, Jonathan Brooks, names to keep an eye on. I don't think Malachi Corley is a round 2 receiver. I think he's a round 3 type of player. Javon Baker started off at Alabama. He is a vertical playmaker that the Browns could go after if they don't go wide receiver in round 2. And then linebacker Junior Colson from Michigan. If the Browns feel like they need to add a linebacker early in this draft, well, they definitely shouldn't wait because it's not a deep linebacker class. Colson could be a name to watch for in day 2, round 3. But Jaylen Wright has been a name that we have talked about a lot on this channel. I think it's a perfect fit for the Browns and a position of need because they don't really know when Nick Chubb will return. And Jaylen Wright packs a punch. He's explosive. He's got really good size. He's not going to be blown over by a linebacker. I think this would be a really smart selection for Cleveland. Jonathan Brooks is another really intriguing option because he's the best running back in this draft class in my eyes. The reason why he's not going earlier is he comes off a torn ACL and he only has 1 year of starting experience. But that's not really his fault. A guy named Bijan Robinson, you might have heard of him, was ahead of him on the depth chart in Austin. So if the Browns feel like this is the year to go get a new Nick Chubb in round 2 or round 3 in this case, Jonathan Brooks could be the target. Malachi Corley, I have a lot to like about because of his yak ability, the Deebo Samuel that people keep referencing in him. Now, when you're a bit of a one-trick pony at a group of 5 school like Western Kentucky, I don't think you're going to see a team reach in rounds 1 or 2 for him. I think he'll be there in round 3. And if the Browns want to add another playmaker at wide receiver and they don't go wide receiver in round 2, Corley could be someone they watch for in round 3. Javon Baker is maybe the best deep threat receiver in this draft class. It's him and Malik Neighbors towards the top. I mean, he averaged 22 yards a reception, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I know he went to UCF, so you probably didn't watch a ton of them in the fall, but he started off at Alabama, and because of the transfer portal, Nick Saban let him get away, and I think that's something Alabama wished they could undo. Baker could be someone that the Browns really gravitate towards because of his physical attributes. And then finally, we've got Junior Colson, linebacker from Michigan. The Browns are definitely going to take a good look at all the Michigan defenders because they were a top 5 defense in college football last year. And as things stand right now, the Browns depth chart, it's a little bit on the skinnier side at linebacker. So they have replenished at linebacker around this area in the past. Jacob Phillips, Sion Takitaki, JOK was a round 2 guy. But it's been a few years since then. I would not be surprised if they go hit reset at linebacker in rounds 2 or 3. My prediction is it's Jaylen Wright. And this is more so me trying to speak it into existence. As a Tennessee grad, I loved what I saw from Wright the last 2 years in Knoxville. I would love to see him bring his talents up to Cleveland. And also with Nick Chubb a little bit in no man's land when it comes to when he'll return, I just think that going running back in rounds 2 or 3 will be something that come weeks 1 and 2, you'll really thank yourself for. All right, let's wrap up the show by picking a card. And then we get ready for day 2 of the draft, baby. Browns are going to be on the clock. Browns, Panthers, Texans joining the party. Which card do you want to go with, Colin?
I'm going to go, let's see. I think I'm going to go 10 of hearts.
10 of hearts?
10 of hearts is what
All
I'm
right.
feeling.
Quick reminder, we'll be live, by the way, on the channel for day 2 of the NFL draft. So come hang out with us in a few short hours. I'm going to go with the Ace of Spades. I was close. King of Spades. King of Spades. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you all tonight for day 2, rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft.